Thank you all for joining the session. So this session is the Building Your Tribe Allyship through Cultural Competency session. So you can interact and ask questions, like I said, via the chat function. You can also use the Q&A as well, but we really say, let's use the chat as much as possible. And please select the toggle that allows everyone to see your chat messages as well, so all the participants can see them as well. Please remember that all these sessions are meant to be informational, and any treatment decisions should be made with your healthcare team. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Stephen. Stephen, please.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon. I hope you all are enjoying another inspiring day of programming. What an incredible past 2 days this has been with the Great Global Cancer Virtual Conference. My name is Stephen Marmaris, and I'm the Advocacy Relations Senior Manager at Amgen. I'm so honored to be here with you all today. We have an incredible session lined up for you. Amgen is proud to continue our support of the Global Virtual Cancer Conference and build on last year's session, which focused on health disparities, addressing health disparities through the eyes of the patient. We believe health equity should be a foundational building block of every healthcare initiative. Disparities are so deeply ingrained in our system that it will take a sustained commitment from a wide range of stakeholders to climb this mountain together. That brings me to the topic of today's session, Building Your Tribe, Allyship through Cultural Competency. How can we work together as allies in this fight? What does good look like? What best practices can you adopt to ensure we are stronger as one with one united voice? Our speakers today truly live this work. Please help me in welcoming Ricky Fairley from Touch Black Breast Cancer and Haley Dinnerman from Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I loved what you said about being stronger together. And I think that the way that Ricky and I work together, both in the triple negative breast cancer space and just in general, the allyship that we've built between our two organizations really exemplifies how much more you can do together, how many more people you can reach together. I think that's so critical and so important. We're really proud of our partnership and our work together, and we think today's session is so important just to illustrate what can be done when you're doing things in the right way. And the way we learn to do things the right way is unfortunately by doing things the wrong way some of the time, and learning from our mistakes and adjusting and adapting. And I think we've gotten to a great place, and we're excited to share all of that with you, all our lessons learned. Right, Ricky?
We are so happy to be here. We're so happy that you chose us, Stephen, because Haley and I have been working together for like many, many years, and we have this, impenetrable bond, but we work together and we figured out how to get the work done in a better way with each other. And I don't think I couldn't have done it without Haley. And I think that, a lot of stuff that we're doing, she feels the same. So we're so happy to be able to share our experience and how important this work is, and how I think our audience and our patients have been able to benefit from the fact that we are kind of joined at the hip in this work.
And I think that's the key thing. At the end of the day, if you're always thinking of the audience, of the people you're trying to serve, you realize that a lot of the questions that you're asking along the way as you're developing programs, the answers are so obvious, right? Just do what is going to benefit the most amount of people, going to reach the most amount of people. And I think that part of the issue is that, when you're developing a program as an advocacy organization, it becomes your baby. You are so attached to the program, to the way you see it, to how you feel it evolving, and you want to take ownership of it. And I guess that's a natural thing. I understand, I completely understand that sentiment. But at the same time, when you take ownership of a certain portion or area of advocacy, you can lose something. And I think it's important to know when to step back, when to let other partners in, and how to do that in a way that, once again, benefits your community.
Yeah, you really can't have an ego about the work, and we all, take pride in our work. But I think when you develop something jointly with a partner, you have more ideas at the table. And Haley and I will often brainstorm. Okay, here's our problem. How are we going to solve it together? So instead of coming to the party with an idea, we actually generate ideas together and brainstorm together. And I think that helps us come up with bigger ideas and bigger platforms that can reach more people. And really our intersect is on a lot of the work is with Black women who get triple negative breast cancer at 3 times the rate of white women. So it's really a segment of Haley's audience and a segment of my audience. So we have this sort of, what do we call, like concentric circles, where we have this overlap where we're reaching so many women who are in need and so many young women who are in need. And so when we kind of solve the problem together, I think we come up with better ideas. And there's no egos on the table at all. It's just pure love, right?
That's so true. And I think an example of what we're saying is, for example, we, are the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation. My sole focus, the entire reason for our organization's existence is to help women and with triple negative breast cancer, that community. So I could say to myself, well, this is a triple negative, program. This is my program, right? And in doing so, would I reach many Black women? Of course I would. We reach plenty of Black women. However, what Ricky can do by involving and partnering with us through through Touch is just bring an entire new layer to it. Not even just an additional audience, but a new perspective, just experience, life experience, knowledge from her community and from her own personal experience that I could never even begin to bring into the program. So when we partner together on issues and programs that are meant to benefit the triple negative community, it just makes the program so much more robust, so much more thoughtful and all-encompassing. I can, just thinking back at certain programs that we've done in the past for the Black community, and then programs that we've done in partnership with Ricky, there's no comparison. There's no question about the fact that they've improved tremendously and reached more people.
And we found that there's a hunger for our work. I mean, the more that we do together, the more we end up doing, because people respond to it, and it makes us, oh my gosh, how do we build this bigger? How can we change it? Or how can we, modify this to make it even bigger, because we're getting such a good response from our patients. So it's all good. It's all good stuff. And I think, I'm unfortunately, I'm the patient too. Like I'm kind of I've had triple negative, so I've dealt with the disease. And so my perspective is kind of, probably more genuine than it needs to be, that I wish it was, right? Because I've had the disease. So, and Haley kind of went with me through the disease and listens and watches and sees. And so I can bring a perspective that she can appreciate, because then she can see it in other patients. So makes it tick.
So Ricky, why don't we start by talking about what this journey looks like?
Yeah.
In terms of, how do you build, I think that no organization, like we just spoke about the benefit of working together. But how do you know who to work with? How do you know who is going to help you build the best program? Who's going to support you in your journey as you grow your organization and build it to expand and reach more people? How does that tribe evolve? So would you start by talking about your personal journey as from patient to advocate to Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation volunteer, board member, board chair, and then to Touch?
Well, Haley, I really think that this grew from the inside out, right? Because I had a need, and I reached out to Haley and the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation when my doctor gave me 2 years to live. And that was 10 years ago, believe it or not. But my doctor admitted that she had only had 2 cases of triple negative breast cancer, and both of the women died in 9 months. And she really didn't know what to do. And the standard of care drugs did not work for me. I did a double mastectomy, did the standard of care drugs, did radiation, and my cancer came back. And at that point, my doctor said, okay, get ready to die. And I said, I can't do that. And I reached out to Haley as a resource. Can you help me find a doctor in Atlanta, where I lived at the time, to that can help me. And she directed me to Ruth O'Regan, who was a specialist. And so I learned about the foundation from the need of a patient. And then once I got better, because I didn't die, thank you, God. And I know that God left me here to do this work. And so Haley embraced my passion and motivation to do the work and put me to work instantly. And so I didn't know what an advocate was. I mean, I'm a marketing person. I'm not a doctor. But I started thinking, wow, advocacy is kind of similar to marketing. It's like trying to help people and give them information, change their behavior, right? So I'm giving them tools to work with. So it all kind of clicked. And so I started volunteering for the foundation. And then I started seeing the foundation's need and the need in the community to reach more Black women, because back then we didn't even know the numbers of incidents for Black women. We knew they were higher than white women, but we didn't have it quantified. And as that data started to come, it's like, gosh, we need to do more help in the Black community. And so then Haley asked me on the board, and I became a board member. So I kind of had, this marriage with the foundation from being sick, right? And then we sort of grew into, and then when I started Touch, because I saw such another need for Black women beyond triple negative, we were still able to kind of see the importance of the intersection of our two organizations and the importance of working together and the need to work together.
And I think that that's really, I have to commend our entire board and our whole organization, because, being in advocacy since 2006, I've seen where board members of other organizations have had to leave for whatever reason and either work somewhere else, start their own thing. And it's not always met in the same way that it was met by our organization. I remember when people heard that you were now CEO of Touch, I got call after call from other organizations saying, oh my God, what happened? They were assuming there was some big fallout. And it was exactly the opposite. When you came to us with this, universally, everyone on our board said, wow, this is a way for us to reach even more people. There's clearly a need. We've known that there was a need in the Black community for more specialized programming, right? And we tried our best as the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation to offer it. And I think we do a great job. But really Black women don't just get triple negative breast cancer, they get other breast cancers as well. And this was a way for Ricky to take the lessons learned from TNBC and, grow an organization that can reach even more women, save even more lives, triple negative and, other forms of breast cancer. I mean, it was to us a win-win. And I think that, people need to start thinking about the patient and in a way that's just more expansive.
Yeah. I think, do you want to bring up the visual, Stephen?
Yeah, I was just gonna pipe in and say that. So we've worked with Haley and Ricky to create this beautiful visual that we're so excited to show, and I think it really visualizes exactly what Haley and Ricky are talking about. So yeah, please walk us through it. This is awesome to see it come to life.
Yeah, we love this. We love the Lisas that have this amazing listening skill to be able to articulate in picture, what we're talking about, right, Haley?
It was incredible. We were on the phone with her and talking about our relationship and the things that we thought were important in building a true allyship. And, a few days later, this came out and we absolutely could not believe how accurately it depicted everything that we have been saying and thinking about. So if you look at the silhouette, right by building your tribe, that's kind of where the journey begins, right?
Right.
You need to understand, what your needs are, what your goals are, and who can help get you there. And, obviously in our situation, it was more clearly defined, right? Because
yes.
Ricky was, had experience as a triple negative patient, and then thriver, and then worked, not only as part of the TNBC Foundation board, but her work was so exemplary, so incredible that she was elected board chair, where she served 2 terms. So, her path was a little bit more clearly defined maybe than, the average person's. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I think that, I felt, the experience made me feel accountable to do this work. So when I kind of got put in this leadership position, thank you, Haley, it made me have a lot of ownership for the work product that we were putting out and how we were serving our patients. Not that I didn't feel that way before, but now I felt totally responsible to make that work happen. So, and do whatever we could to raise the money and get us the resources that we need to be able to do this work. And I think our vision to save lives is very clear. Haley, my vision. I have 3 grandbabies, 3 granddaughters, and the oldest one is Belle. She's 4, and I have about 10 years before she gets boobs to get rid of breast cancer, triple negative, and all of it. So I think that our purpose is all very clear, and I think you feel the same in terms of the impact we can make in our community to make women aware and give them the tools they need to deal with this crazy disease. That really, I think we should talk a little bit about TNBC. TNBC survivors, we're special. And what makes us special is we're the only breast cancer subtype that doesn't have a drug to prevent recurrence. And so most women, can take something for 5 years. You may have heard of tamoxifen or hormonal drugs that you can take for 5 years to prevent recurrence. We don't have a drug. And so it gives us a special bond that really you can't explain it, because it's a sisterhood that you really don't want to be in, this breasty club, but it makes us really, connected, because we're sort of always worried about, is it going to come back? And we don't have a buffer there. And for Black women, they have a 39% higher rate of recurrence for breast cancer. So that just made our vision very, very clear, and the need for programming and understanding and support.
And there's another connect there. I think that sometimes when people think about allyship, they're thinking about it only in one direction, but it isn't, right? So Black women are 100% an underserved community, but so are triple negative patients as a whole, regardless of their background. It is a breast cancer that affects between 10 and 20% of breast cancer patients. So really, at best, 80% of breast cancers are not triple negative. So when you look at other advocacy groups, most of their programming, rightfully, unless they have a triple negative focus like we do, is going to try to appeal to the majority of women with breast cancer who do not have triple negative. So we had, a common goal, and working together, Ricky was helping our underserved community, and we were able to help hers.
Right. Exactly. So should we follow our little path here? So
yes.
I think we're trying to get to defining who should be in your tribe. Mm-hmm. And it's clearly, I think, aligned values and aligned goals. And we had an aligned goal, and we had a similar, aligned value. So I think that's really important. And, every relationship takes time and trust and building trust. And I do think we had instant trust here, because you helped save my life. So that was a foundational trust factor there. But still, even looking at some things that the other organization does, how are they aligned with you, I think is really important, right? And then kind of figuring out, what you can do together. What are the options? What are the kinds of programming that you think will benefit your audience? And then what have we done individually that worked or didn't work that we could put together and maybe work harder for us? So we looked at some of the things that Haley was doing, some of the things that I thought we should do. And we're like, well, how can we make this bigger and better, right? And how can we reach more people?
Absolutely. And I think that when, we're looking at this path, you realize that, it's not necessarily just one partner. I mean, one partner is your first step, but no organization, no matter how great, can be all things to all people, right? And every organization has a particular expertise, and there's so many wonderful advocacy groups that, are aligned with your goals, right? And once you find them, I think it opens so many opportunities and possibilities in terms of what you can do and how you can reach people. It's not really only about creating new programs. Sometimes it's about being able to perfect the programs that you currently have, making them better, making them reach additional people.
Right. And I think that, we both partner with other people too. And those partnerships, I believe, are a little more contrived. Maybe because, guess what, they need a Black woman in the room, or maybe because they need a Jewish woman in the room with triple negative, or maybe because, but not because it's a genuine kind of value system connection, right? And so I get so many calls, and so I think so do you, Haley, about, we're doing this study, I need 5 Black women with TNBC by Friday. You know what I mean? And so the relation or the partnerships are not about really getting work done. It's about because they need it for something that they're more concerned about than actually doing work together towards a common goal. So yeah, I think that
is definitely true. I see that all the time, but I also see, I have seen so many organizations. You introduced me to one yesterday. That
love them.
That are genuinely interested. You could hear it from, that not just the messaging that they put out there, but just the way in which they talk about the communities they're trying to serve. You realize that it's pure and it's wholesome, and they really want to help. There's so many organizations like that too, and it's just a matter of having those conversations and finding them.
Yeah, and that's something that we share. So when I come across somebody that I think could be beneficial to our mutual audiences, I call Haley, you got to check this out. And she does the same for me. So it's almost like we've extended our kind of connection and partnership into finding other people that can work with us that we feel good about. And so, when I bring somebody to Haley, or when she brings somebody to me, we automatically trust that they're going to be good people. So, and they're going to benefit our audience. So that, just a whole nother, kind of extension of our relationship. So.
Sure. And just think about the benefit of all this. Like there are only so many hours in the day, right? I get so many calls from, organizations, advocacy groups wanting to partner on something or needing advice about something. And, even on the best day, I can't reply to everybody. The work is there's just so much of it, but
there's so much work.
We divide and conquer, right? And in doing that, we're really able to create some amazing programs. I can think of so many great examples. One of them is actually right on the chart.
I know. Should we talk about that?
Sure. Right. Sure. It's such a great program.
Yeah. So I think I can, because I said to Haley, Black families don't talk about disease. We don't talk about any disease until somebody either is dying or died. And it's not a kitchen table conversation, anything about health. And so we had reached out a few years earlier to young women. We actually put together an Hbcu internship program to bring more Black women into the conversation. And it's kind of my belief, and I've kind of extended this to Haley, that our young women are going to be kind of an entry point into the families and the households. And that Black women have these very important and significant generational conversations, that we wanted to bring some generations together to talk about breast cancer. Mm-hmm. So we decided, why don't we figure out how to make a conversation happen with a mom, a grandma, an auntie, a sister, and try to uncover some of those secrets that they're hiding. You're only as you're sick as you keep secret, or what's that saying that Dr. Mo says, right? Keeping those secrets. So uncovering those secrets and opening these conversations to a family. And we learned so much about, oh my gosh, they really are keeping it a secret. Oh, well, I'm going to tell my sister, but don't tell my son because he'll worry. And there's so many crazy emotional issues around being sick that Black women don't want to admit that that they're sick. They don't want to tell their families. They're afraid that people who are dependent on them will be scared. And all kinds of stuff came out of these conversations. But so we kind of had to start talking about, how do we make this happen? And we developed what we call Pink Table Talk. And we Haley had this a great idea. Jada Pinkett has these really cool things called Red Table Talk. Let's make it pink. So that's sort of how we got our name, right?
Yeah, I'm a pop culture junkie, and I loved her show, Red Table Talk, and the multi-generational conversations. And, I remember when you were talking about how these conversations around breast health are not happening in Black families, it's the first thing that popped to mind, this multi-generational conversation. And what we thought of, so now as we're talking back and forth, we realize that so many important conversations in all households happen in the kitchen. It doesn't matter how big your house is. Everyone always gathers in the kitchen where the food is to talk about things. And we thought, why not normalize having these kinds of conversations around your kitchen table? So pre-pandemic, the idea was that Ricky and I would take a pink tablecloth and our branded mug and travel around the country, having selected various families in different cities around the country. We would show up at their kitchen table and help facilitate these discussions and stream them on Facebook Live. And the idea behind that was, the more we spoke, the more we realized that so many conversations, difficult conversations, are not happening, but people will share content.
Yes.
So I remember telling you, there was a romaine lettuce recall. So my mom would know not to call me in the morning to say, hey, there's a romaine lettuce recall, but she shared, something from Facebook. She tagged me. And that's where we got this idea that if we can only create something where we have these model families on Facebook, having these conversations, and it looks real because it is real. They're laughing, they're crying, they're joking around, they're doing the things that families do. People would relate to it and hopefully share the content and have these conversations in their own kitchens, whether or not Ricky and I were there. And Ricky, how amazing was that first screening?
Yeah, our first screening, we actually had 87,000 views, which was like, oh my goodness. And I was kind of on screen with the family, and they were uncovering secrets. Remember, Val was talking about, how she didn't tell her sister, or she told one sister but not the other, and she didn't tell her sons, and all the stories came out about how they were managing this triple negative breast cancer situation in their families, and the conversation as the conversation got more and more intense, we kept getting audience. People kept joining the Facebook Live, and we were like, oh my goodness. And Haley standing in the background kind of saying, it's up to 50, it's up to 60. And so we had
holding up signs, asking good questions. But I think that brings up a point, right?
Yeah.
So the idea here was to have conversations in Black households among, at a kitchen table. And this program was 100% a joint effort. Ricky and I contributed to it equally, from the idea,
making a logo,
everything. But when it came time to film, I understood, and Ricky did not encourage this in any way, but to me, the program would benefit from me stepping back and being behind the camera and holding up the signs and engaging with people on Facebook, from my laptop outside of view, right? So that the table would be, the people seated at the table were the audience that we were trying to reach, right? It was a Black family. And I think that is something that not every organization is willing to do. And that's what I was talking about before, saying that you have to take your ego out of it. And you have to, you have to not take ownership of things, take things so personally. And it's an easy decision when you think about the audience, right? So I think that helped. We screened it on blackdoctor.org, right?
Yeah.
Which, obviously I've been on your show numerous times and I'm always welcome there and everything. But for the purpose of a program like this, I think it made so much more sense that the women seated around the table were all Black women.
Yeah, and so I do have this web series on the blackdoctor.org Facebook page, and they have 2.2 million followers. And during COVID, we were getting pretty big audiences, maybe 20 or 30,000 views a week, which is crazy. But when we did this episode, we had 87,000 views. It's probably been one of their largest webinars in the history of their brand. And they really kind of are the WebMD for Black people. They have a huge following. So So, but this is one of their biggest episodes of anything ever in the history of BlackDoctor.org, which is pretty cool that we were able to do that. And we really don't even know how, but I think that we kind of connected all the dots for what a patient needed in this program. They needed to talk about breast cancer. They needed a platform to talk to their families. They needed to be in their kitchen. They needed to have this sort of intimate conversation because the family could only see each other and meet. They couldn't see the fact that we had 87,000 people watching them, which would have made them really nervous probably if they knew that. So they were able to sort of create this sort of intimate setting, and I could ask them the questions that people needed answers to. And so it really, really worked like magic. And now we've done, how many have we done? Like 7. And I think our ideal world is to go back out into the world and do them live as we had originally planned. So we're trying to hope to do that in the first quarter of next year, because I do think there's some value to kind of being in the same room than just being on Zoom. And even for that one, we took a little bit of risk. We all wore masks, but we all were in the same room at Haley's house when we filmed it. So I think that also just having that camaraderie in the same room and not on a Zoom screen made it more compelling to our audience. So, and we love doing this now. It's so much fun. No, it's so much fun.
It was great. It was such a nice day. And, talking about going back to how, we are each other's allies, right? It's not going just one way. We've perfected this program. I think we're doing so well with it. And for 2022, as the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation, we're going to continue to do this program, but we're also expanding. And our next family is going to be a family that has a BRCA mutation, Ashkenazi Jewish family. So we're expanding the program. We're going to try, as the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation, and with Ricky on board, obviously, to reach even more people using the model that we started here that was so successful. So this allyship works both ways.
Yep, where I will take a seat back and be the one holding up the cards, and Haley will be the one at the table with the family to make it relevant to that audience. And so we kind of see, the value of both. And then actually we're going to actually take the program to a couple of HBCU campuses and do it with our interns who haven't had a breast cancer experience, but get the moms and the grandmas and the aunties talking about breast health just as a topic to begin with. So we're going to do the same. So now we've sort of are building on what we've established here to better serve all of our audiences. So it's really a good thing to do. And now we have a formula that works.
It's a great thing to do. And I think that, yes, exactly. And this is just one example of one program that we've collaborated on. There's so many. And it's not always just the two of us, right? Sometimes we bring other organizations into the mix. So we have an incredible program coming up around the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium. And, it's, Touch the Black Breast Cancer Alliance, TNBC, bringing in a third organization, Cancer Fashionista Foundation, that is headed by another TNBC survivor. And she would, whereas Ricky and I have been to the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium many times, she would be there for her first time. And we're trying to bring all the information from the conference, to our 3 respective audiences. And, obviously there's a lot of overlap there, but some are unique to each organization. And the idea of reaching so many people and bringing 3 different perspectives to it. So, one, the seasoned, advocate, another, the newbie, right? Who's coming in and trying to learn how to benefit as a patient or survivor from the San Antonio Breast Cancer Symposium, how to extract that information. All 3 of us have been working nonstop to create this incredible program for our larger community. And, we're excited to bring that into the mix, but it's another example of how you can continue to add additional, organizations that you trust to help you grow your programs and just make them better.
Yep. And even in this case, again, we were going to do this live and in person, but because of, COVID, still some political banter going on with the state of Texas, we figured out how to do it virtually. And, we were going to go cowboy boot shopping. We still have to do that, Haley. We still need the cowboy boots.
Cowboy hats, cowboy boots.
Right.
Outfit ourselves from head to toe.
Right. But it's, Melissa has been part of our family. She's a board member for Triple Negative. She's actually my first triple negative sister, Breasty, that I met in my journey. And so we all have a bond, but we all have this common bond of helping people and helping people understand this the disease that we don't believe gets enough attention. So I think also, Haley, we should talk about when we bring these ideas up with our funders, like Amgen. Thank you, God, for Amgen. They support us so wonderfully. That I think they get what we're trying to do together and they appreciate it. And we'll often have conversations sort of individually with our funders, and they'll say, well, did you talk to Haley about, are you and Haley doing this together? Like, what are you doing? So people have come to know, our funders, to know that our work together has so much value that they kind of sign up and help us, which is such a great thing. And that, it's something that they welcome. And, Amgen's been such a force in terms of helping us do the work that we want to do and signing up first and saying, go do it, you guys. So that's also a great thing.
It's a huge thing. And I think that, you bring up something important too. The other reason for having these partnerships and being a good ally is to avoid duplication within the advocacy community. There's no need for 8 programs that tackle the same topic, right? Where you can work together, creating an incredible program that takes in, the expertise of a bunch of different organizations and brings together all their audiences, for mutual benefit, and I think that our funders appreciate that. They realize that, wow, these are organizations that are working together so well and reaching so many people. There's no reason to fund, programming that is pretty much the same at 5 different organizations where we can, just work with one, nice group.
Right. And we try to address kind of everything. Well, maybe we should go down our how to be a good ally.
Sure.
Because it's so good. The women that made this graphic are like, oh my gosh, like after just talking to us for an hour, they kind of had our brains. What did you say yesterday, Haley? They're inside of our heads.
They were looking inside our brains. I mean, it's basically like just all there. And we were just brainstorming and talking, like we normally do.
Like we normally do, right. But I think they really captured some of our stuff, right? Don't make assumptions or further. We don't. We talk to each other. We know each other. We listen, and I think that just being open to who we are as people and who our patients are. We don't make assumptions. We don't believe in. We don't have any of that happen. That stereotypical stuff. It's all about genuine understanding. Don't you think so?
Absolutely. I mean, it's you really have to listen. And I mean, this graphic is a perfect illustration of what happens when you really listen, not just hear, you listen. And, again, it's about taking ego out of it, taking away all your, what we all have baggage that we grew up with, things that we were taught or we heard or based on our experiences. But when you're trying to build a relationship, there's no room for any of that. You have to start from kind of a blank slate and trying to understand where the other person is coming from, where the audience is coming from, and what their needs are. And that changes over time, right? It's not always the same. The TNBC Foundation, the typical person who came to us 10 years ago had different issues and needs and that they needed met than people now. Right.
And, we have to learn and kind of go with the tide, right? I think, we both sort of have this golden rule understanding, treat others as you want to be treated, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that was kind of a foundation for our trust because we both had the intention to just do good for the good of people. And so that kind of established a foundation for, I trust you. And then again, you did save my life because you found me a doctor that cured me. So So,
and you gave so much back. I mean, you gave back so much and helped so many other women, as you went forward. I mean, when I think of, Ricky going to chemotherapy with women, the hand holding from the moment of diagnosis through treatment that she gave to so many women that were desperate for that support. I mean, you're an angel on earth. I don't know many people who would be able to take the time and the mental energy that it takes, and it takes a lot to do that for so many women, and you do. And I think that, when we're talking about demonstrating trustworthiness, it's about actions, right? Because everyone, especially lately, everyone talks the talk, right?
Everyone talks the talk.
Everyone talks the talk.
Yeah.
But
we definitely have a girl crush. We definitely have a girl crush. So sorry about that. Okay.
Okay, we'll stop.
I love you Ashley, so much.
No, but we really, I think it's about action. And I think, Ricky has seen how our foundation, how TNBC Foundation operates from the outside, from the inside, in every possible way. And I've seen how Ricky operates and what she's been able to do with touch and her incredible commitment to eradicating Black breast cancer. So, these actions speak so loud, and I'm able to, look at touch and at Ricky as, a perfect ally. I know that I can, run ideas by Ricky, and all that's going to happen. She's not stealing my ideas. She's going to improve on my ideas. And we're going to come up with something, sometimes to work on together, sometimes to work on apart. But that trust is there, and it's essential in an ally relationship.
And I remember the first grant that I applied for, I called Haley, okay, help me. I can't even go here. And she spent hours on the phone and gave me so many examples. Okay, this is how you write a grant. This is how you talk to this person. And she gave me a wealth of knowledge that I didn't have, and kind of being new in this advocacy game, that really has helped me establish how I was going to run my organization. I was able to learn from her experience and the experience of the foundation to really get started and kind of get to be able to run pretty fast, because she took me like way up the learning curve. So that, that again was action and helping me. And it was just, she didn't have to do that, and no one else did, in terms of, okay, this is the secret to writing a grant, right? So here are my 5 secrets. And so she shared those with me. And so I think both of us have had experience too, where people did come to us and stole our ideas and took them, and, and really messed them up because they didn't do it right. But when they try to take them from us, but we don't have that between us. And we've actually learned how to be discerning enough to know who's going to be in our tribe with us too. So it helped us partner with other people and have a foundation for what that needs to look like and feel like. And it's really a feeling. Really, it's really a feeling.
Absolutely. And you look at someone's track record and what they've been able to do and who they were doing it with. And is it a continuing relationship? So sometimes you'll see people or organizations collaborate once on something, but not again, and then, and on the other hand, you will see, partnerships that are lasting. So before the pandemic, when Living Beyond Breast Cancer was able to have live conferences for patients, the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation partnered with LBBC, and we helped put on the Triple Negative, at the time it was called a track, for that conference, something that is a smaller organization we wouldn't have been able to do, but working with LBBC, we were able to give our audience, our constituents, what they wanted, which was that face-to-face contact, that, that feeling of community that you really can only get by meeting in person. So we hope to get to that at some point, but Living Beyond Breast Cancer was a great partner for that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think, clearly we talked about the intersect of our audience. So that inclusion thing was so important. And we've been able to reach a lot of Black women on one day, 87,000, and so many more since that one event. So I think we, understand that, but we also understand the needs for our bigger audiences. So now we're taking this idea that we did together and reaching even more people, and how we're going to expand the program next year. So I think that's good. And we talked about listening already too. Gosh, we have this right here, but but listening and, you know, maybe it's also Haley and I often talk at like 6 o'clock in the morning and like 2 o'clock in the morning or texting or something. So we're listening all the time.
Yes.
All the
and
time.
Sharing information and
All the time.
You know, I'm looking at something on this chart that we didn't touch on directly by talking about it, but we actually are acting on it. So it's about taking, you know, not taking credit and sharing credit where that's necessary. And, you know, even though we didn't talk about that, we mentioned Cancer Fashionista and Melissa Berry and Living Beyond Breast Cancer and the work we do together. And I think that that's so important. And again, it goes back to, you know, what we talked about in the very beginning, which is, you know, not having, there's no need. It doesn't benefit anyone when you take ownership of a certain area of advocacy.
Right.
You know, you can do so much more by, you know, bringing other people in, and it's okay to share the credit.
It's okay to share the credit. It's not about the credit. It is not about the credit. It's about doing the work. And I think that that's where we have a bond, because we don't really care about the credit. We really just care about getting the work done. And, you know, maybe somebody will know who did it, but it doesn't really matter to the patient who's sick. And the calls that we get, you know, I got a call 2 weeks ago from a woman who, she's 58. She has 2 daughters in their early 30s, 3 grandchildren, and, she has metastatic TNBC, has gone through 2 clinical trials, and her doctor said, well, there's nothing more we can do for you. And she's very vibrant on the phone. She seemed very vibrant. She knew exactly every drug she had taken to the nth detail. And she called me and said, can you help me? What can you do? You know, I called Haley, I called everybody, but it's like, those are the calls that we get. These women want to live. They want to live. They don't want to die of this disease. And we work really hard to help them live. And I think just that common goal to help people live is what keeps us going every day, right? And developing more programs to make that happen.
And just always keeping the end user, the patient in mind. I mean, I think that is, you know, what it should always be about. And I think for our organizations, I know that everything that we do, you know, from the smallest program to something super expansive and far-reaching, I mean, it's always about how do we help the patients. And I think part of that is also sharing information with each other when you survey your patient communities, right?
Right.
So I think, you know, a lot of organizations do that work, but not everyone shares it. And I think that that's important because the patient's needs are evolving over time, and you need to evolve as an organization. And maybe as you build your tribe, when the patient needs evolve, your tribe needs to grow and evolve. As well.
Right. Your tribe needs to grow with your audience, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah. We have so much more work to do, though. It never ends, right? I'm not sure if we're supposed to leave some time for questions. Stephen, should we take some? Anybody have any questions? Or I guess we should look at the chat, right?
Yeah, I think it would be great to have some interaction, if possible. This has been such a terrific conversation. Thank you both so much for being so transparent and so candid about, you know, your journeys and your process of working together and finding each other as great collaborators. I guess maybe I'll kick off the conversation or with a question. I know that one of the key takeaways or one of the suggestions that we had on that visual was be open to constructive feedback. Yeah. And I think that ties in nicely with, you know, being trustworthy. You know, these issues are so complex, and you know, the concept of eliminating health disparities and talking about race can be really uncomfortable for people. And so I think it's really important to be candid. And I think part of being candid is being open to constructive feedback. So I wanted to see if both of you had an example maybe of a time, you know, where you worked together that you had to provide some constructive feedback to each other. You had to push back, you know, gently and respectfully on something that one of your organizations was doing that you thought could be done better. Because I think that's a great that is such an important part of being a good ally and being culturally competent and lifting each other up. We need to push, gently sometimes when we see our partners and our friends in ways that they could be better.
That's a real hard question for us. I think, Haley, do you have an answer? Because that's a hard one.
I do have an example.
Okay.
So the Triple Negative Breast Cancer Foundation has noticed it's not a secret. So there's a huge disparity in the number of Black women in clinical trials. And without adequate representation in clinical trials, the treatment options that are going to become eventually available in this space are going to not take into account the specific situation of the average Black woman, right? And this is something that we noticed early on, and we've been trying to address as the foundation. We had various programs. We did numerous focus groups in the past. We have a program with webinars, annual webinars about clinical trials, dispelling the myths of clinical trials. We have multiple webinars about Black women and triple negative breast cancer, where we brought together, specialists that happen to also be Black women to speak to Black women about triple negative breast cancer and the need for clinical trials. And yet we weren't moving the needle at all. Okay. And we've been trying a lot. And I remember saying to Ricky, as a Black woman, please tell me what we're doing wrong. What can we do better? And accepting the fact that, despite, best efforts, we really weren't moving the needle, and we needed to do something different. And maybe we weren't the organization that should be tasked with this. We weren't, maybe someone else can do it better. And I believe someone else can. I believe Touch, the Black Breast Cancer Alliance, is moving the needle there. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, Ricky?
Yes, we talked a lot about, that's a good example, but it wasn't really a pushback. It was more like, and it's become really one of my main focuses right now. We have 3% participation of Black women in clinical trials. And guess what? The drugs aren't working on our bodies because we don't have the right biology. We don't have the right, the right drugs for our bodies. And we don't know because we've never been in the research. So it is really a major focus for us. But I knew that, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but as a marketing person, I spent my whole career working on messaging. And it is really about how you're talking to people. But I went and did some research on it to figure out, and I moderated the research because I was able to dig into their heads to really see beyond what we already knew and what people are already what was surfacing about what the issues were. But I knew that it was an emotional issue that we had to dig for. And we found it. And we're now starting a movement on to kind of change the game on how we talk to Black women differently. And really, I can convince someone, I've learned, in 5 minutes, just on a basic understanding of what a clinical trial is, to do a clinical trial. And so we're about to start that movement in a month or so. But I think that it was something that I kind of took on and had to do. And what we learned was that it's not even about reaching Black women, it's about touching them and touching them in a way that's emotionally driven. And what we were finding is the communication and the way the communication was delivered was not the right way. And we learned that the communication has to come from somebody in the breasty community, because the breasty voice is a voice of trust. So when a doctor brings it up or a nurse brings it up, guess what? It's not resonating. And so it's got to come from another Black woman who's been in a clinical trial. And when she talks, her voice is trustworthy, and she can give messaging that's penetrating, like, do it for your daughter. We're right now, the communication takes our power away as Black women, and we're very powerful badasses with the purple capes. So we've got to recognize that and talk to her in a different way. And that's what we're doing. And Haley was able to say, okay, Ricky, take this ball, which is great. I think also we, even when she kind of stepped back to let me manage the pink tabletop conversation, I didn't want her to, but inherently she knew that was the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. So.
Awesome. Well, I see Christian on screen. I don't know if if we're at our time or if we have time maybe for another question. I know there's some in the chat, so I do want to be able to speak to those if we can. Okay, so I'm getting the signal that we do have time for one question. So one of the questions most recently was, I'm wondering how this topic name was developed, considering the cultural colonial implications that come along with the use of tribe in place of using circle, group, or crew, for example. So I think it's a question about the language that was used with respect to tribe. And I'll just say quickly, Ricky, that I think we're trying to package a couple different themes into this talk. One of the themes speaking to the individual survivor, to the individual patient advocate who's starting a journey, who's trying to build, a collection of committed individuals or committed organizations to help them achieve their goals. And then the second theme of this talk is to talk about, how we work together. What are best practices to work in culturally competent ways together. So I think that's kind of why the word tribe was used, because we were trying to achieve, two different objectives. But I'll let the speakers touch on it too.
I view tribe as a girl thing. Maybe tribe is a girl thing, like we have for tribe. It's a girl thing, maybe. I don't know, Haley. What do you think?
I mean, that's how I saw it too. But talking about accepting constructive criticism, now that I hear that question, I can see how someone would see it differently. And yeah. I accept that. I mean, I think that, again, it's a learning process, right? And we're not always going to get it right, but we're trying and we're working together. And, I appreciate someone bringing that to our attention. It's just something that the connotations I have, that are associated with that word are different, but yeah, but I see the point. I see the point.
Yeah, I see the point. I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great example, Haley, of kind of utilizing some of the best practices, having that humble ability to recognize that how you see something may not be how another person sees something. And so I think that brings this talk really full circle, and certainly practicing what's been preached during this session. I thought this was a tremendous session, but let me turn it over to you all for any closing thoughts, because I think we're right up against time, right, Christian?
Well, we are so honored that you saw us as an example of, two organizations working well together. And, we're really honored that we were able to share our experience. And we're both, Ricky and I know I speak for both of us when I say we're available to anyone who wants to talk further about this.
Yeah, we're happy to talk about it and share. And I see our friend Tallulah in the audience making comments about the importance of community organizations, which we also try to partner with. So thanks, Tallulah. Yes. But if you want to talk to us, we're always here. We always answer the phone all the time, night or day, right, Haley?
Too much, but yes.
Too much.
We always do. And we're excited to hear from you. And we really believe so strongly in allyship and in the benefit for the community that we serve, in working together. So please,
please reach out
with any questions.
Yeah.
Well,
and watch our next Big Table Talk.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Haley and Ricky, for being here today. This was such an important topic. Thank you, Stephen and Amgen as a whole for being here and sponsoring the session. So next on our conference agenda is the relationship dynamics of cancer. So to get there, you want to navigate back to our conference platform, GVCC21.com, log in, and once you're in the lobby, you'll see a little button that says join now for that session. We hope to see you all there. Thank you again, and have a wonderful day.